So, Bobisode emails. What do you say?
Yeah, let's do it.
This first email, the anonymous patron, she says, I just want to thank Bob for sharing what he goes through and modeling a healthy way to experience these tough feelings. He allowed all of us to be empathetic listeners to him. In my 40s and 50s, I notice this happening to me and struggled how to let these unresolved feelings come to the surface. And number one, care for myself. And number two, let others care for me while going through them. I saw others in my family collapse under the weight of this stuff. And it's just so heartening to know that with love and understanding from others and from oneself, recovery is possible, even if it seems to keep coming up. That's all. You are both doing such a good job. End of email.
Thank you. That's really nice to hear.
Yeah. I can imagine what anonymous patron is referring to, but what do you think they're referring to specifically?
Oh, I think it's one of the last episodes that you published that it's like Kirk has a rant and Bob is grieving. I think it's something like the title. Yeah. So I imagine it's the stuff that come up from that. But to be honest with you, I didn't really listen to it, so I can't remember.
I did. And I think I texted you something like, oh, wow, because
Yeah, you did. That's
the
right.
episode happened, and then with those kind of episodes, I don't edit them very much because the raw kind of conversational ums and pauses are necessary. I do edit it, though, because I worry sometimes that in a long silence section that people will think their phone has died or something.
Right.
So I'll take out that, but try not to do too much of it because if you do too much, it'll sound kind of like weird.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, it was. I edited it, but also listened back to it when it was published, and I was like, yeah, it was a powerful episode. That was a patron episode.
Yeah.
But what do you think they're talking about when they're talking about the difference between them and their family and you regarding allowing that oneself to have these feelings?
Oh, well, I don't know. I guess I would imagine that they're talking about noticing that the people in their world have a defense or a denial or something that protects them or inhibits them from feeling, sadness or pain or grief or anger maybe. Or maybe anger is the defense. I mean, that happens to us too. And that they value the experience of their pain and sort of like an allowance for it to metabolize in a way that the people they see around them perhaps don't have, and they care about that. That's what I hear.
Yeah. She says that others in her family have collapsed under the weight of this stuff.
Yeah.
What do you think they're referring to there?
Maybe depression, maybe thwarted life, inhibited desire,
Alcoholism.
alcohol, yeah, sure, drug, other kind of, problematic distractions, who knows what, right? But
Yeah.
all that stuff that we do because it has an impact. I got to tell you, the longer I live, the more I think about addiction as awful cement shoes. Like drugs are really, really fucking powerful. They're made to be that way. And when they snare us, man. And I think it's important to say because there's still a culture of, the belief that addiction is some kind of, weakness or character problem. But I don't know. I've seen enough addiction to recognize those who are swamped by it are truly and well swamped. Oof.
Yeah.
Anyways, maybe that's what they're talking about is witnessing that.
Yeah. How have you avoided that?
Oh.
Not addiction specifically, but like the kind of collapse that she is observing in her family.
Partially, it would be my guess. I mean, there's ways in which I live that are inhibited. I was just in therapy this morning, and we were having a laugh about how I often don't know what I want. And when I try to express it, it can come out really clumsy or awkward, or in my case, at times irritable. And also that the cost to me is to live a life where I don't commit fully to the things that I want, because the actual seeking of what I want, it generally raises the emotion of shame. I think I'm on a little bit of a tangent here. Okay. Well, it raises the emotion
Well,
of...
this is the core issue that if run amok would cause collapse. That's what you're referring to, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And for me, there is a degree of collapse. I'm still able to function, hold a job and, I don't know, pay my bills or whatever it is people do that's functioning, right? I suppose the collapses that I experience are more internal, like where I will not seek the things that I want.
Yeah.
And
paralyzation is the word that comes to mind.
What's that word? I don't know that one.
Paralyzation?
Yeah. Oh, paralyzed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking of parallel, like geometry.
Oh, parallelization?
Yeah. Yeah, paralyzed. Yeah,
paralyzation.
Yeah.
It being, I don't know what the word, cocooning or avoiding or,
right.
I don't know, fermenting.
Yeah.
In your juices.
Yeah.
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 Not getting your needs met.
Right.
Resenting others for presenting real or imagined barriers to you getting your needs met.
Yeah. The distortions, it's difficult at times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the shame, the self-hatred.
Yeah.
But you don't collapse into Fox News or conspiracy theories or alcohol or violence or loneliness, like just alone and hoarding shit in your house.
Right, reclusiveness.
Getting guns or, there's a lot of ways to collapse.
There are a lot of terrible, terrible ways to collapse. Yeah, no, I don't. I'm fortunate that I don't.
Yeah. And the more I experience life, the more that's what I see is when I see a conspiracy theorist or people that are going down a Fox News rabbit hole or any number of rabbit holes.
Yeah.
It's because of these traumas that are constantly causing suffering for the individual.
Right.
And most people don't get treatment for it. So they find their own way of coping or their own way of reacting to it, I suppose.
I suppose that awareness of that is even by degree. Like some of us might be aware that we're doing that, and others of us aren't aware at all that we're doing that, and aren't aware at all of, it's like hard to know what you never know.
I think that, if I might cartoonize or present a profile of the Fox News conspiracy theory rabbit hole, faller, if you will, that they have collapsed into that and are consumed by it. I think that for them, they're largely unaware of what we're talking about. And even what we're talking about is just a way of modeling it, but it is an unscientific thing to say. We can't prove it or disprove it.
Right.
But for this, within this model, for a profile like that, I think they know of the shame. I think they know that they hate themselves. I think they know that, or at least they feel worthless. They feel under threat. Mm-hmm. They feel demoralized or broken or not good enough or something. I think those thoughts are unavoidable consciously.
Like when the lights go out at night.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're just laying there and the defenses start to drop because you got to relax to sleep, and then they come for us. And then there's an awareness.
Right. They might not ever talk about it
maybe not
publicly.
Yeah.
But those things are unavoidable. Beyond that, in terms of like, it's because of disorganized attachment abuse that happened when I was young, and I'm distorted in this way, and I have to stay on top of it, or else I'll turn to coping that is self-destructive.
Yeah.
Turn to narratives that are helping me to avoid, like it's the libtard's fault that my life isn't going well, or this gives me something to get angry at instead of my dad.
Right.
I can be angry at Joe Biden instead.
Sure.
Or Donald Trump for that matter.
Yeah.
And, they're not aware of any of that. Yeah.
That's, whatever. I prefer my form of pain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it still hurts, but at least you're not creating more for yourself. And you've done a lot of healing and a lot of self-compassion.
Yeah.
So, that takes you down the road of recovery and healing.
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
Actually going to go see my therapist in person for the first time since COVID.
Why?
He invited me. He experimenting with the home office.
I'm happy.
Yeah.
Is it going to be weird?
Yeah.
Is it going to be more vulnerable?
Yeah.
Is it going to be annoying to drive to his office?
He lives near the Home Depot.
On Aurora?
Yeah.
Okay.
It won't be.
That's pretty close.
Yeah, it's only 5-10 minutes for me. Fortunate. Just dumb luck.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
I'm glad.
Yeah.
Because as an in-person therapist myself and someone who prefers it as a client.
Yeah. I'm thinking about it.
Annual YouTube member and anonymous patron. She says, "Hi there. I just finished Kirk Rants and Bob Grieves, that episode. Man, I had to do a little crying myself while listening. It has come up many times where Kirk is empathizing with Bob and expresses his anger towards Bob's parents. Mm-hmm. I'm wondering how Bob feels when he hears this. I think any sort of feeling Bob could have is valid, so no judgment, of course.
Yeah.
Personally, it sort of hurts my ears to hear it when Kirk is angry at them. Even though I feel so much compassion towards Bob, it makes me feel sad for my own family. I am 28, but have younger siblings, ages 16 to 20. It is very possible some of them may have disorganized attachment and or cluster B personality disorders. It hurts to think of someone out there thinking, fuck your parents. You couldn't be attuned at least 60% of the time about my parents. Oh, I think what she's saying is that it would hurt her if someone said, fuck your parents for fucking over your kid, some of your kids.
Right.
Because anonymous patron and YouTube member doesn't hate her own parents or something.
Right.
It sounds like. No shade on you, Kirk. I understand where you're coming from. But I wonder what your thoughts are, Bob, when Kirk says, fuck your parents. So I'm curious too. How do you feel?
Sometimes I get a little bit anxious about that. Sometimes I feel validated by it because certainly I have been enraged with them, mostly just in myself, but occasionally with them or toward them or right at them. And some of that is my own anger has subsided, and lately, I mean, my mother just died, 4 months ago? And my dad died, it's been 13 years. And I just think how they suffered, did the best they could, yeah. I mean, I think that's true of parents. They're doing the best they can, even if they fall short of a mark or whatever. They are doing the best, and my folks did the best they could, and I think I'm better off. And I feel sad for the ways in which they were confined, constricted, thwarted in their own seeking of their own desire, and pretty much doomed, I think, from their own kidhoods, because if you want to get mad at somebody, you could just get mad at my grandparents. And if you want to get mad at somebody, how about their parents? And how far back does it go? I mean, my people are Irish Catholic and German Catholic, so there's a legacy of patriarchy and control and fear, terror that's instilled by that particular religion. And you want to get mad at somebody? Get fucking mad at the church, man. Fuck them. I we were walking out of the airport yesterday, and there were two people with a little placard that said something about Bible study. They were standing there like soliciting for their religion and offering. And I was just like, fuck you, man. Who are you to say this is the right thing and that's the wrong thing, and pretend that you're doing an act of service when all you're doing is jerking off on the rest of us? Fuck them, man. I was so mad. And while I respect people's spirituality, I've been becoming very angry about the myth of Christianity that gets put upon people. And I'm going to tread lightly here because I don't want to offend anybody in their beliefs, but it's kind of magical, like the way a literal interpretation of that stuff is, and ridiculous. And I know it's probably going to piss somebody off. Oh well. And I'm good with people doing what they want to do. What I'm not good with is people presuming that they know better for others. And that is just fucking unacceptable. It doesn't fucking matter what people believe to presume that they know something better. Anyway, so my parents, part of me appreciates your outrage on my behalf, and part of me feels a little anxious about it.
Anxious? How?
Oh, kind of like Daddy's going to come and punish me for, like it's non-rational. There is no consequence to me for you expressing your outrage. It's not like even
like if Dad were to know that your friend and was saying this and you weren't pushing back or something, that he was going to get you.
He'd come punish me. Yeah, it's weird, but that stuff just automatically comes up, occasionally, and not as powerful as it used to. I used to be afraid of writing my book because of how it might land for them, but actually anymore, I'm just like, fuck it. I'm just it's my story, whatever. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't reflect on anything but me and my imagination and, viewpoint, blah, blah, blah. So quite frankly, yeah, I'm good with it. And I feel sad for the ways in which my parents have been robbed. And then their parents have been robbed, and their parents. And
well, reading this email made me worry. So I'm glad that they asked this, and I asked it of you. And I can be that way sometimes too much. I'm not hearing that from you, but I can be. I'll tell you that it comes from an authentic, caring place. Yeah. And I see you suffer, the listeners, maybe they get this, but you suffer every minute of every day. And I know that. And that fucking enrages me because there's a lot of ways to fuck up parenting. That's particular, to fuck it up that badly, that a man in his late 50s, literally every minute of every day, his entire life has been that of suffering. Like that is a royal fuck up. And you have to go against all sorts of instinct and knowledge and, common understandings of what to do and what not to do to children. And okay, fine, you had your history, absolutely. But okay. But are we saying they were like doomed? No, I don't think anyone's doomed. Is it too much to ask that in the 60s they were going to go to therapy? Yeah, maybe. But I don't know. Maybe I'm angry at them. Maybe I'm angry at the church. Maybe I'm angry at your grandparents, your great. I don't know. I'm angry at whatever led to that. Because this isn't just an intellectual thing for me, and it's not something like, oh, you have traumas that occur at times. This is happening every minute of every day.
I completely agree. We are each responsible for our own behavior. And I got a trauma history. I'm still responsible for the ways in which I impact the people around me. Yeah. So I feel perfectly fine as I'm willing to apologize when that happens, and to make amends when I need to.
Yeah.
And
Meaning you're not a robot
No.
that doesn't have any responsibility.
right. No, I'm totally responsible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so were they. Totally responsible. And, if I could have one thing, it would be an apology from both of them, the sincere one.
Which again is not like counter to their upbringing.
No.
Do I disparage them for making some mistakes? No. Do I disparage them for not knowing because there wasn't a good way to know back then? No. But there were so many ways they could have corrected for it
Yeah.
in the 80s and the 90s and the aughts and the and they didn't. So fuck them, honestly. And they're not my parents, and your siblings hearing this might be like, "Hey, Kirk, calm the fuck down." Like they're not your parents. And I get that. And people hearing this might be like, "Oh, I wouldn't want Kirk to talk about my parents that way." and I get that too. But I don't know. I can't really do anything about my anger.
There's nothing wrong with it.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I would curb it if I heard from you that it hurt you or something.
No, that didn't do that.
And honestly, for it to make you a little anxious, I mean, unless you tell me otherwise, like that, it's kind of good exposure to just be like, it's okay for that anger to be out into the room and nothing befalls you.
Right.
So that's a sort of icing on the cake that's inadvertent, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's not a decision I make to say that. It's a spontaneous reaction,
right.
including tears and being sad and frustrated too, just with the universe that it would have that unfairness.
Mm-hmm.
But getting to something else you're saying about Catholics. So I grew up with Catholics being a minority in my community.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't know that was true. Everybody was Catholic where I grew up.
Yeah. In Seattle and in the suburbs, I would say that the majority was Christian, non-denominational, Protestant, Methodist. Yeah. And even those terms are a little funny in Seattle because there are versions of Methodist Christian churches in other parts of the world in the country that are more rigid or more patriarchal.
Right.
And in Seattle, certainly there was patriarchy, but it was more familiar to, well, I don't know if it's familiar to anyone these days, because I feel like the evangelical movement and the conservatism infiltrated that whole thing. Because, for younger people, you might not know this, but in the late 60s, early 70s, Christians, there was a huge Christian movement among hippies, among liberals. Jesus Christ Superstar.
Oh, yeah.
And
Godspell.
Other things that were very hippie. Yeah. And it wasn't for everyone, but it was definitely a movement. And it's the sort of church that I grew up in. Yeah. That would never disparage gay people, would absolutely accept that, and would never propose that anyone was better than anyone else, or it was all it meshed very well with peace and love and openness and pushing back against society. Looked at it in a certain way. Jesus was a hippie and anti-establishment, and one of accepting poverty and communal living and this kind of thing. Anyway, so. That was the majority, regardless of what denomination. I grew up in what they called a non-denominational church, which was even, I think back in the 70s, was even more hippie. But anyway, there was a small minority of Catholics, a small minority of Mormons, and even a smaller minority of Jewish people. No, I didn't know a single Muslim or Hindu individual, or there were some Buddhism of Japanese people in my family, for example. There was sort of a split among Japanese immigrants of Buddhism, Shinto, Buddhism, Shinto combo, or converting to Christianity. Anyway, so, but my family comes from a branch of Christian converts around the year 1900. Anyway, so something just hit. It's a little windy, and I think that was like a like a pine cone
Pine
that just
cone?
hit something. Anyway, so to me, when I would hear about Catholic guilt and harm and patriarchy and abuse, it didn't really resonate with me, partially because I just wasn't very close to Catholics, but also because I think the Catholics in Seattle might not have had as much of that. But learning more about contemporary, or at least the way the Irish Catholic Church was up until kind of recently, from Sinead O'Connor,
Right.
or even listeners of this podcast will email in and say
Yep.
what they're, I think things are different today, but it's kind of a recent development, and there was a lot of control and a lot of abuse. It was integrated into your life, the misogyny and the control and the shaming and just the way, and of course every Irish community in Ireland would be different. Every immigrant Irish community would be different. You're also, German.
Right.
So, but learning more about that, I think rather recently realized for the very first time just how pervasive and how horrible that culture around Catholicism and control and patriarchy and shame and guilt tripping all the time, because in order to retain control, not only if you're a church and you're trying to establish control as opposed to Protestants that are infiltrating this sort of thing, you have to, it's a cult, you have to say there's an enemy, and if you have disparaging thoughts or any kind of questioning, you are of the enemy, you're the oppressor. Is that a familiar face?
No, yeah.
Like what's familiar to that?
Oh, well, the first thing that comes to mind is my dad likes architecture. He likes it. And when he was dating my mom, they went to New York City for a day. I'm Philadelphia, not too far away. And he wanted to see the inside of this Episcopal cathedral. Walks in, looks around. I was probably fascinated by it and probably enjoyed it. Comes out, walking down the steps in front of the cathedral, and a bird just happens to shit on his shoulder. And he thought that's God punishing him for going into an Episcopal church, sort of, walking away from the fold. And that's just a one event. But to have that interpretation come, and the fear that I'm aware of that he felt, it's like, man, this guy never had a fucking chance, right? And he comes from people that believe this shit. So of course he absorbs it. And I was born in 1967. After I was born, my mother goes to the priest and she says, I'm third. She says, I don't want to have any more kids. And the priest said to her, well, it's your wifely duty to have sex with your husband when he wants, and birth control is a sin. Contraception is a sin. And that was actually the one rebellion I'm aware of that she had. She said, fuck this, and she went on the pill. And my dad blanched and like, oh, Betsy, you're going to go to hell. And but he came around, and I guess, sex, maybe it's worth it. And then they decided they wanted a fourth, and so that's my brother Dan, the only one of us that was planned. And then she got a diaphragm. So
Yeah.
But like, that's pretty fucking controlling when you can reach into somebody's bedroom and tell them how to fuck or how not to fuck.
And that your body isn't yours.
And yeah, right? Like, fucking insane.
Yeah.
Insane. If a government did that, we would just go ballistic. But a church does it.
Yeah.
And so we just sort of, oh yeah, that's just how it is, blah, blah, blah. Well, fuck them, man. They can all just fucking piss off, man.
And it's in Philadelphia, which might be more open and have more influences for your mom than if she were in Ireland or in other communities
That's right.
around the world. Or, even though that was happening, from my understanding in the 60s in Ireland, from people that will email in, it could be even worse.
Worse. Oh, without question.
Yeah, because it's a monoculture along those lines.
Right.
And the idea, I don't know if this is the case, but to have any kind of question about the Catholic Church could be akin to saying that you're aligning with the English and the atrocities and the rape and the colonialization. And, you're a horrible, we know what questioners of the Catholic Church
Right.
are like, and you're like that, and
So-
what are you doing? I don't know if that's the case, but
Well,
you can
they'll find
understand
somebody
it.
who wants to or thinks about bucking the. Yeah, of course, you're going to get hammered.
Yeah. Yeah. So when you mention the oppressive or negative influences on your family tree,
Yeah.
then in the past, it wouldn't have really hit with me as much as it does now. So, yeah.
My parents were in one of those hippie churches. It was an underground, take on Catholicism, and that church, they ordained a woman, and she was a priest in the thing, But these are supposedly Catholic folk, So it was just underground. When we used to meet in the kindergarten of a local school, and once in a American Legion Hall, not churchy places, just big enough public space or big enough spaces to use for that sort of thing. And there was the hippie vibe. They were going to make this 50 feet by 15 rug that at its center had a peace dove. Everybody knows what those are. You know what that is, right?
Peace dove, yeah.
Symbol, and so a white peace dove and a red round background, and then just a rainbow of colors. So there were these rug remnants that were about, maybe 6 by 6, varying, not just square, whatever. And for some reason, I don't know why this thing got stored at my parents' house, but it did. And so on Mondays, people would come to our house, and we would sew these patches of remnants together to make this, and it never got done. I wonder if it still exists somewhere. But a lot of it got done, and it was just rolled up in our house. And I used to feel like the peace dove part of the carpet was actually quite nice, and the other parts were, kind of rough. And but I stabbed my fingers many times sewing rug bits together, and the plan was to make this enormous sort of rainbow-ish, yeah. I'd say beware of aggressive certainty in any of its forms.
Yeah.
Whether it's coming from a government or a church or an individual or whatever, aggressive certainty. Why does any certainty need to be aggressive?
Yeah. I remember when you reviewed my book on supervision, and I had best practices for supervisors, and your feedback continually was, I don't like this word should, therapist should, or something
Right.
like that.
I remember that. And it's just a way to talk, like a colloquial way to speak about what people should do, as opposed to this is a good idea. And I didn't care for it.
Right. I can't remember what I did with the feedback.
Yeah, I don't remember.
I think some of it I was like, oh, okay. But then other times I was like, well, I don't know. I think people actually want to, this is an instructive book.
Yeah,
and so
exactly. Right.
they don't want me to just be like, well, whatever. I don't know anything.
Right.
Let's take a break. When we get back, let's read some more emails. What do you say?
Right on.
We're back from the break. But in closing about the shoulds and the aggressive certainty, I appreciate that about you, because it's something that I believe too, but don't articulate very often and don't remember to follow all the time. So that is something that is good, and something that I try to model on my YouTube channel when I am saying not only things about the people that I'm watching, but also about what I'm saying about them. Anyway, YouTube member and long-term patron Raven from Portland, Oregon. She says, hello, my therapist died unexpectedly, and I am grieving her. My therapist died. We only worked together for about a year, but we had some huge milestones in that short time. For the first time maybe ever in my life, I had a safe place to explore and express my feelings, and it was truly a long road to get there. There's a lack of closure since there was no memorial service for her clients, and I only found out through our community that she had passed. I'll remember some of her wise words and the feeling of her acceptance for the rest of my life. Am I weird for grieving the loss of our client-therapist relationship and my safe place? Bob, what do you think?
It's such an interesting question. It's easy to just overlook the fact that a therapist-client relationship is a real relationship where there's care, probably mutual, but care from the therapist toward. So to not grieve, it would be kind of weird because it's like going against your biology. Your biology is when you form an attachment with somebody and you lose that connection, there is some form of grief. I mean, don't get me wrong, if people don't feel sad about such a thing, it's not like they shouldn't. I'm just saying that if you do feel grief, it is because it is normal. In fact, it's an indicator that you were doing some really fantastic work. And absolutely, totally normal.
Yeah. For some of you out there, you might be able to relate to this, that your relationship with your therapist, it's hard to compare these things because they're different, but you could say that your relationship with your therapist is as intense and as attached and as important and as ingrained in your biology as any other relationship, whether it's with your spouse or your parents or whoever. And of course, if that person died, your therapist, then you would have the same feelings that you would in any other circumstance. It might even be complicated by the fact that this therapist wasn't just a peer that you hung out with. It was someone that healed you and was there for you, and maybe a parent in the way that your parents never were or something. Especially if you just had a year together, there's some important milestones. I'm glad you had that, but it could feel like a lot of lost potential, So yeah, of course. And in my book, I write about this, disenfranchised grief. This is one of them. And I'm bothered that they didn't invite you to the memorial, or they didn't have a client memorial. If the therapist is the sort of therapist I think that she was, that, do we have the gender of the therapist? Yeah, her words, yeah. So she probably had a lot of clients, past and present, that had a similar feeling that you did and a similar depth of attachment that warrants having a memorial. And it's, I don't know, frankly irresponsible not to have some kind of, to not even tell you. You had to find out through the grapevine. That's a problem. Yeah. And that's maybe a problem with your therapist, honestly. Not to
proper planning.
Kick someone while they're dead. But like Bob and I have a thing where if we were to become incapacitated or dead, the other person has access to each other's client records and therefore can immediately contact all of them. So
yeah, I just reviewed it a couple months ago to make sure it was still up to date. I had to change some things so you were not missteered.
Yeah, and it's not hard to update.
No, not at all.
And I guess while we're on the topic, we can reaffirm that there should be invitations to whatever memorial.
Yeah, and it's funny, I hadn't considered it, but that's a complete oversight. Not that any of my clients should come, but for some, that might be really useful and really helpful to have at least the option.
Yeah, I've had colleagues, friends who have died and have gone to, like Jerry Saltzman, when he died a year or two ago, there were multiple memorials. One was for, the sort of typical friends and family, and I attended that one, but I also attended the professional memorial, which was for the university community and also for his clients. But his family, some of his core family members, like his wife, also came to the professional one. So, but it was really interesting and nice to see that his clients were there and they were talking about their own feelings and stuff. Because it was a sudden death, he got hit by a car.
Yeah.
And so it's not unheard of, but I would imagine most therapist deaths are not formally inviting the clients. I would hope that most therapists, when they die, have measures to inform the clients of the death. Sometimes the therapist knows, right? Like they have cancer and they have a month to live or something, and so they reach out.
Right. Yeah.
Like my mentor, Paul David, who died recently, he knew a year and a half in advance that he was going to kill himself because of his Alzheimer's. But that isn't always the case. But yeah, of course, there's a ton of grief. And I'll say that your grief could have been helped by attending a memorial, but you don't need to go to a memorial to grieve. And it can feel incomplete, which can be a fly in the ointment of one's grieving. But what I would say, a part of your grieving was literally thinking about this enough to email us about it. Hearing us talk about it is a part of the grieving. Yeah, you're also giving other people the opportunity. I had a friend who just had her therapist die after seeing her for like 20 years or something. And that was really hard. So, it happens. So just keep going down that road, and it's not like, oh, I didn't get to go to the memorial, therefore I'll never be able to grieve or move forward or something. Now, maybe there's a path forward of reaching out to other clients or the family or something. There's a possibility that there's, if you wanted and people were receptive to it, then maybe there is some way of communal grieving that could help things, but you don't have to do that. Then you go, furthermore, am I weird for wanting to take a break from therapy for a while? I'm so put off by the thought of having to establish and open up to someone new. End of email. What do you think, Bob?
Yeah, that makes sense. Whether you should or shouldn't, that's a personal choice. But the fact that you feel that way, I think most of us would feel that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, going to another therapist could help in a number of ways,
Sure.
Not only with what you were working on with the deceased therapist, but also with your own grief. But yeah, there's nothing wrong. It just kind of depends on where you're at and what you want to do, and if you feel like you want to take a break. And the thing that I would tell people is to revisit the question every couple months or something.
Yeah.
Instead of assuming that this is a forever thing.
That's
Maybe
good
it is a
advice.
forever thing.
Could be.
But if you just assume that or avoid the question or get into a rut or a habit, then you could find that you missed a lot of opportunity to heal and to get your needs met.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a break. When we get back, one more email. What do you say?
Right on.
All right, we're back from the break. This email from long-term middle-tier patron Jay from the UK, which rhymes. He says, "Hi, Dr. Honda and all you amazing co-hosts. I have recently discovered that my fiance," and he has in parentheses F, meaning female. "I have recently discovered that my fiance has had a one-night stand with a female friend of hers. We have 2 children, age 6 to 8, and have been together for nearly 14 years. We have talked and decided to try to make it work, and that both individual therapy for each of us and couples therapy is needed. My question is about the best way to proceed. What are the pros and cons of us seeing the same therapist for both individual sessions and couple sessions as opposed to having 3 separate therapists? Thank you for doing what you do. I doubt I would be in a place to even consider therapy had I not had your podcast over these years." End of email.
Wow.
Bob, what do you think?
Great question. It's a fairly common question because on the one hand, it seems like one-stop shopping. Like you go to the department store and you get the shoes and you get the pants and you get the jacket and you get the whatever people buy at department socks, right? And so, that makes sense. But in this case, I would really strongly encourage you not to do it because it's hard to be the therapist. It would be impossible for me to be the therapist that my client would need me to be if I was both their personal therapist and their couple therapist. And because the focus is, if I'm your personal therapist, I'm still going to be thinking relationally, right? But God, I don't like the way I'm answering this. I wouldn't fucking do it.
What don't you like about it?
Because I don't feel like I'm finishing any of my sentences. That's probably the main thing. I don't think you should do it. I think you should get separate therapists and have them talk to each other. Maybe the couple therapist would sort of be the hub, but whatever. So that you're protected from an individual therapist getting stuck in a bind between what their goals would be as personal therapists and what their goals would be as couple therapists. It's too many hats and it's not necessary. If there was only one therapist in your town, okay, maybe, well, now there's telehealth, so that's probably not even a thing. I would keep the separates.
Yeah. Yeah. So the umbrella thing that I'll say is it's up to you and up to the therapist, because the therapists involved might have their own opinion or style or take. But I don't have any recommendation either way, because there are pros and cons. It depends on the way you and your fiance feel about things. It depends on how things progress over time, what you're looking for. The fact that you're trying to make things work again, if that's pretty serious, then it opens it up to the possibility of working with the same therapist. If that was more unsure, then most people would recommend that you have different therapists. But either will work is a thing. The problem is that, and Bob, you're not saying this, but online people will say, or what I'll hear at conferences or something, is this very definitive answer that always gears away from couple and family therapy.
Well, you just heard it from me. Maybe not as emphatically as you get, but it's funny, as I'm listening to you, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. Kirk's a family therapist. I'm trained as an individual therapist.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're also a couple therapist.
Oh yeah, no, that's true.
So the blanket thing I'll say is that if you had 3 therapists, that's fine. Yeah. But if you had 1 therapist, that's also fine. Are there pros and cons to either? Yeah. But people tend to just always gear towards, having things be quote unquote clean. And there's a con to that, which is that if I am working with you and your fiance, a client like you, then when I meet individually with you and your fiance, I know so much more about what's happening, and I'm way less likely to give into distorted narratives, which happens all the fucking time.
Oh yeah.
If you've ever been in therapy with, if your spouse has ever been in therapy with a therapist that doesn't know you, you know what it's like. At the very least, you've asked the question of, does my spouse's therapist have a distorted view of me because they never talk to me? And it happens all the fucking time. And that can ruin everything.
It can.
It can absolutely ruin everything. Now, that's more of a problem with the therapist. That's not an indictment on the model.
No.
But it could stave off that or reduce the risk of that happening if the therapist actually could talk to you and see your side of the story and have an opportunity to see the nuances and hear both sides. Also, it depends on what you're looking for in individual therapy. If you're, because one way to frame actually what you're looking for is you're looking for a couple therapists that meets individually with each of you occasionally, which I do. With people that are going through infidelity recovery, I always do this. Meaning that you know that there's importance for you and your partner to have some alone time with a therapist to freely talk about what you're going through away from your spouse. That is often referred to as individual therapy, but that can be a component of couple therapy. Yeah. Whereas if you're looking for very specific individual therapy things, like I really want to work on my traumas or something, then yeah, typically we're talking about individual therapy. Can that be done by a couple therapists? Yeah, but it doesn't have to be. So the certainty at which people talk, you weren't using this certainty of speech. You were just speaking more of what you would recommend someone do, which is fine. But the way people talk about this is like, it has to be clean. And it's similar to the reaction that I see people using when you have a friend, or you yourself go to a friend to complain about your marriage or about your job. People will almost always say, well, get a divorce or quit your job.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just like, oh, wouldn't it be so nice? And, that's just their own anxiety, or people just want things to be clean. And that isn't always the best answer. Is it something to think about? Yeah. Maybe divorce is the answer. Maybe quitting your job is the answer. But the quickness that people will have around that. So the cons, though, of having the same therapist is, as Bob said, I think anyway, trust violations or worry about that sort of thing. Yeah. That if you, for example, as the cheated on partner, if you are, say, spinning out of control with anger or something, and your therapist says, whoa, like, yeah, you're allowed to be angry, but you can't go that far. Then there's a creeping distrust that could happen into your therapy of, is my therapist biased against me because he's bonding with my wife? Has he been gaslit by my wife? Does he not understand me? Does he not care about my feelings? Or your therapist is just a little quiet that day, and because you have borderline tendencies and are prone to betrayal traumas being triggered, then maybe you're not a candidate for that, So not to say that if someone was on the borderline spectrum that you can't have the same therapist, because I have worked with couples like that. There's just a lot of things. And I'll say that as a therapist that has worked on either side of this scenario, where I'm the one therapist for the couple, or I'm the one therapist for one of the people, or just the couple, that both models have their annoyances, Like when I'm the only therapist, it's a big burden. And if I run into these kinds of paranoias on behalf of the client, or I get biased and I like one person over the other or something, like I think the cheating partner is a jerk face more than, I don't have as much compassion for that person when they deserve that, So there's that. But from the other side of things, when I'm, it's so easy for us to say, well, just have your therapist talk to each other. Most therapists don't talk to each other.
They don't talk to each other.
Because they don't have the time. Mm. It's unpaid work time. Also, when you do talk with these other therapists, sometimes you don't understand the other therapist half the time.
You don't necessarily have an alliance in terms of goals or treatment or viewpoint or.
Yeah. I mean, how many times have you conferred with a fellow therapist working with a client that you both share, and you're just like, what the fuck is this person doing?
I'm thinking of a time right now.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
So to just say, well, just confer and you'll work it out. It's like, okay, in a perfect world, then we would talk all the time, right, and we would understand each other and collaborate. But a lot of times, we either don't talk very enough, or we don't understand what each other is doing, because we're like, what the fuck are you doing with your clients? I've had a lot of experiences on either side of this that are just like, we just say these things, and when you actually live it, you're like, well, I don't know. And working with one therapist would eliminate that, right? That's true. There would be absolute alignment across the different venues of therapy because there's one person, you know? But if that one person is an idiot or biased, then it gets thrown off. There's also confidentiality concerns that everyone should consider, therapists and clients, because of, if the cheating partner tells the therapist that they are cheating again or something, then where does the confidentiality lie? If then you need a secrets policy, and there's pros and cons to that whole thing. And if there's separate therapists, then there's no overt worry of that, but therapists are supposed to confer. But there's less likelihood of trust violation if your therapist never knew that your other partner was cheating. What I mean? I'm sort of rambling, but so the short answer is either will work. It just depends on what you want. You just need to make sure you understand the pros and cons, what feels right to you. It's sort of like you have a week to go on vacation. Should you go to Hawaii or New York City? Both have their pros and cons. And people wouldn't say like, well, obviously New York is better than Hawaii or whatever. It's just like, well, what do you want, and what do you want to get out of it, and what's it like when you're there? And there's just a lot of options. And I should say that I also personally will, with particular clients, very much prefer to be a part of a team and not be the only therapist, because I know that there are a lot of landmines with the clients, where I would like other people to take up some of the slack or some of the flack, or have multiple heads looking at the same situation. So I don't want to give the impression that I'm always sort of edging towards being the one therapist for all. You know what I mean? The other consideration, I should mention is that if you're a therapist and you're struggling with your revenue, you might want to gobble up all the revenue by being the only therapist, and you might err on the side of that for selfish reasons that are against the recommendation or of what is the standard of making those kinds of decisions.
Yeah.
So might I be a victim of that? You know, maybe. So those are all considerations. Anyway, any final thoughts on that, Bob?
No. Good answer.
Well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because
you deserve it.